In this group of videos, we are going to create a work process to texture a Maya file using Substance Painter. This is an introduction level that just touches the basics on how to bring a file from Maya into Substance and creating some basic materials and textures in that program. So I have this file here. There was a model in Maya that I have created, organized, cleaned up. All objects have deleted history, and each one of the components has been separated with the right naming. So I'm going to start, in order to bring it into Modbus, into Substance, I need to start preparing it. So the first thing I want you to be aware of is that all the UVs have been done. So if you click on every object that's going to have sort of separate file of painting, you need to separate them so they have a good way of painting it in the program. Additionally, we need to work on a naming in order to have a better result in that program. And what that is that Substance requires a way for you to export out the model so that the maps, the UV maps, work properly. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select this file, and I'm going to rename each one of those parts. I'm going to put the word main at the end of each file's name. So that way I have a good naming for Substance to recognize my file. That I'll explain a bit later what that means exactly, but for not main T, but just the word main. I'm putting underscore main as a suffix for it to work better. Okay, and so I have that. Second, I need to create materials for each one of those parts with the intention of creating a way for the program to identify them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call my hypershade, and under the hypershade I'm going to export out just for this practice just this part. So I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4 shaders to create this. So I'm going to go under Maya, and I'm going to look for Lambert's will be fine. Make sure you don't use Lambert number 1. I'm going to create 4 Lamberts. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to make sure I craft them here so they're all kind of organized. And I'm going to just give them a specific color to each one of them. That way it's a little bit easier for me to recognize their identification in Substance. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to change the color of this file. I'm going to just give it a nice pink there. This one I'll just change the color. Let's give it a green. That one, it really doesn't matter the color. This is more a way to you recognizing it there. If you can make it, if you're gonna make it a color that is kind of base of the material that you're gonna do, that's totally fine too. I have those colors there, and I'm gonna assign those colors to specific parts here. Actually, I'm gonna need another one because I forgot I had the visor too. So the head has this cyan tone. I'm going to create an additional one, and this one is going to have a different color. Let me just give it a orange tone, and that will be the visor. Of course, again, these colors is more like a way to identify, and it is not that I'm going to try to have my guy to have those colors. I'm also going to rename this Lambert so I know what they are, because they are going to become in Substance. They're going to become layers, so or better groups of objects. So I'm going to just call it here antenna shader. and then this one is going to be his right ear shader, and then this is going to be his left ear shader, and this is going to be his let's call it helmet shader, and the orange one is going to be the visor shader. Okay, so I got those, and I have my naming correct, and of course if I was doing all of it at once I probably would have to do it to all of it, but for now I'm gonna just go work on those ones. It seems to be better to me that when we're starting we want to start a little bit simpler. I'm gonna save my file here, and I'm going to now export out these guys as an FBX. Before I export them out, actually, I need to know and make sure that I have the right format to export it out. So I'm going to go under Windows, Settings and Preferences, and then Plugin Manager. I'm going to scroll down until I look for the FBX Maya. FBX Maya has to be loaded and autoloaded. It's kind of like past halfway the list. FBX Maya. So I'm going to close that. I know that program is activated. Now I'm going to select all the objects that I'm going to export out. I'm going to say File. In this case, Export Selection. I'm going to launch my export window. If you're using your Maya GUI, you probably will have here on the side on the window an option for you to click on a menu when you select an FBX export as a type. I do not have it because I'm using the Windows GUI that just to speed up my Maya. So I'm going to just have a RoboHead. I'm going to call it here RoboHead underscore main, which is my my main file, the one that I'm going to be using there. And I'm going to save my FBX. This pop-up window comes up, and again on yours this window probably was on the side of the GUI. So you want here to just uncheck smoothing groups under the geometry section. We don't need animation. You can have it to triangulate, that's fine. And I'm going to say export. So smooth meshes are tessellated. So some smooth meshes were tessellated to make it more triangular in case that I need some cleanup. And I'm going to try to bring this now into Substance. But I'm sorry, before I go there, I need to do one extra step, which is working on the model in Substance in order for you to create a proper mapping. We need to create a second version of this file that will help us with that identification of objects to separate the mapping a bit better. So what that means is we're going to save this file as a new file. I'm going to call it robot pre-substance. I'm going to call it ID so that I don't mess up my original file. And I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to rename the objects from the word main to ID. I'm going to copy paste that. That will help Substance with recognizing the different parts. It's a little bit clunky to me the way they do this, but it's intended to actually be a bit more sophisticated when you create normal maps, a bit more in a process that's a bit more engaged than this. So for now, this is fine. You just create two files in which you save the name of the files a little bit differently with a different name, a suffix of called ID. I'm going to save the file again, and then I'm going to export out these same objects, but now the FBX is going to be called RoboHead instead of main ID. And I'm going to say export. All good, got exported out there. I'm going to close this. I'm going to go to Substance. And in Substance, I'm going to bring and import my object, my main object initially. This one is telling me that I don't have the latest version. I'm going to say no, don't update it. I'm going to close for now this window. So here we are in Substance interface, and by default you have a workspace, which is this one. We have some tools on the left, and on the right we have our different menus for us to look at different things that we will be able to work with. So we have materials and shelves and all sorts of things that we will be using little by little. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say File. I'm going to create a new file, and this one is going to use the template, the PBR metallic roughness. That's fine for now. There are multiple templates that you can work from. I'm going to use this one, the default one. I'm going to select here my main file, which is the one that I created as the main there. And in here, I'm going to just make sure that keep everything like that, but I'm going to change my resolution from 2024 by 2048. That way I give a higher resolution to my file. This normal map format, DirectX, is fine. I'm going to say OK. And it just takes a few seconds, and my model has been imported. Here I have it totally ready to be painted on. So let's just do a little bit of exploring here before we start importing the second model. So the first thing we want to look here is, if I go to the upper right corner, if I click on that icon, my texture list shows up. And my texture list means the objects that I have identified as shaders in Maya, they show up as so. And right now they are all using the main shader, and the main shader is a shader that it's a metallic coming from the original template that we selected as our original template to work with. We can fine-tune and look up the shaders and look at the shader attributes when you go to this little icon here that has the main shader. In this case is the PBR shader. We can create new shaders if we want to. For now we are not going to that, at least not yet. And I'm going to go back up here and see that each one of those objects I can hide them. So this is the way for me to isolate parts so that I can work with them. That texture set list is connected for each object to, for example, layers. So each object, each one of these objects has a set of layers that work very similarly to Photoshop layers. So when you work on every object, you will be able to paint in inside of each object individually. The other window that is important to remember is the window up here. And this window is a settings per texture. So when you're going to paint your layers, each shader is going to have a texture, and that texture has connected into it a set of channels. And those channels, you can expand on them, or you can keep the ones that you have by default. Default, we're going to keep it right now. We have a base color, height that is going to represent bump, roughness that's going to represent parts of it, bump, parts of it could be a little bit of a reflective, metallic of course, and normal map. You could add more to it if you need to. We're going to keep it for now very simple. We also have a window for paint properties where you can modify your brush, and you can do all sorts of different things, and you can show down here how or what parts of that material you wanted to be working on. So if you have up here the channels, you can see them here: base, height, roughness, metallic, and normal. When you go to your brush, you can choose which one of those you want them to be active when you are painting. Here we have a shelf of materials that you can work from that will give you basis for you to create your textures. You also have a series of other elements, other components that give you skin, or you have also other tools to create different type of textures and brushes and other things, type of brushes, particles, and so on and so forth. So it gets a bit sophisticated, very sophisticated actually, to create your file. Next, we have here this little icon. That's the display settings. And the display settings start with environmental settings. So which is pretty nice because you can here under the map, you can see different types of you're gonna call it sky domes or domes to illuminate your scene. So that way you have a sort of similar lighting of what you think your final image is going to be doing. You can make that image visible, of course, if you turn it all the way up, and you can play with the blurriness of it so that you can see if the object is illuminated matching that, which is pretty neat because you can then go and find, you know, the right one that will give you a similar condition to what your scene is going to be. I'm going to just find one that gives me something that is more like this. I kind of like that one, and this again is pure preview for you to be able to work in sort of similar conditions to your file at the end as it's going to be rendered in Maya. Of course, you can crank the exposure of it so that it becomes lighter or darker. You can keep it at 0 for now. You can rotate your environment, of course, so that you can lighting is matches a little bit better there. And you can blur it so if you don't get distracted with the background, it's always good to have it. Or you simply can hide it so the lighting is still there, but you'll see just your model. I'm using right now exactly the same keys in order to manipulate the rotation and the movement of my object. I'm rolling my middle mouse button right now.